California's housing market, long considered one of the most resilient in the nation, is experiencing a reversal few saw coming. Across 10 major cities, home values are dropping at rates not seen since the Great Recession, with the statewide median down nearly 10% from its 2024 peak and inventory flooding the market, up 35% year over year. We're talking about millions of residents, neighborhoods worth billions, and communities where real estate was supposed to be untouchable. The listings still promise luxury, resilience, the California premium. But drive through these neighborhoods and you'll see something different. Price cuts stacking on top of price cuts, open houses with no visitors, days on market counts doubling and tripling. The real story isn't just about falling prices. It's about insurance costs spiking, migration patterns reversing, and the basic math of homeownership breaking down. Today, we're counting down 10 California cities where the collapse is already underway, from early warning signs to full-blown epicenters. Stay until number 1. It was once considered completely untouchable. And if you want to track what's really happening beneath the headlines, hit subscribe now. Starting our countdown in Stockton, a city that for years played the role of Bay Area affordability escape valve. Families priced out of San Francisco flooded here in the 2010s and early 2020s, accepting brutal commutes in exchange for single-family homes they could actually afford. The median home price is now down roughly 6% year over year, with inventory climbing nearly 30% according to Zillow data. That might not sound catastrophic until you meet the families who made that calculation. Picture a dual-income household, both commuting 90 minutes each way to the Bay, who bought at the peak believing remote work would cushion the distance. Then the return-to-office mandates hit. Now they're facing falling equity, rising gas costs, and a market where similar homes sit unsold for weeks. For sale signs that once disappeared in days now linger through entire seasons. The deeper story in Stockton involves the secondary effects most analysts miss. Local businesses that depended on that influx of Bay Area money are seeing revenues contract. The restaurants that opened to serve the new arrivals are cutting hours. The boutique shops are closing. When housing values fall in a commuter city, it's not just homeowners who suffer. It's the entire economic ecosystem that grew up around the migration wave. Property tax revenues, which fund schools and city services, are starting to feel the squeeze as reassessments reflect lower valuations. The city's budget projections, built on assumptions of continued growth, are being revised downward in real time. Meanwhile, homeowners who leverage their equity for home improvements or to consolidate debt are watching their financial cushion evaporate. That $50,000 in available equity they counted on? Gone. The refinancing option they assumed would be there when they needed it. Impossible at current rates and valuations. Stockton's decline is running below the California average, but it's a preview. When your entire value proposition is cheaper than somewhere else, and that somewhere else starts falling too, the floor drops out fast. The city that served as overflow is now experiencing outflow, and the question emerging in city council meetings and neighborhood association gatherings is stark. What happens to a place built entirely on being someone else's compromise? Moving south to Bakersfield, where the promise was simple: cheap homes, stable energy sector jobs, and Central Valley growth potential. Prices are down approximately 7% year over year, but more telling is the days on market figure, jumping from around 25 days to over 50. Walk through these neighborhoods and you'll find oil field workers facing layoffs just as their adjustable rate mortgages reset to punishing new levels. The cruel irony is that Bakersfield's low purchase prices masked high carrying costs. Insurance premiums are climbing faster than in coastal areas due to heat and fire risk. Utility bills in 110-degree summers rival mortgage payments. The energy sector's volatility is compounding the housing crisis in ways unique to Bakersfield. When oil prices fluctuate, employment in the region swings wildly, and mortgage holders who seemed secure 6 months ago are suddenly facing pink slips and severance packages that won't cover 3 months of expenses. The industrial nature of the local economy means job losses tend to cluster. Entire crews laid off simultaneously, entire neighborhoods hit at once. Food banks in Bakersfield are reporting increased demand from homeowners, a demographic that traditionally doesn't need assistance. The psychological toll is immense. Families who saw home ownership as the foundation of middle-class stability are discovering that foundation was built on sand. Compare today's numbers to the 2022 peak, and you're looking at double-digit declines. Price reduction signs now appear on homes that were supposed to represent accessible homeownership, the California dream at a discount. But what recent buyers discovered is that affordability and stability are not the same thing. A $350,000 home that loses 10% of its value might cost you less in dollar terms than a $1 million loss in San Francisco. But for the family living paycheck to paycheck, the math is equally devastating. The cheapest entry point in California is starting to look like a trap door. The inland empire city of Riverside was supposed to be different. A genuine migration magnet, not just an overflow valve. Year-over-year prices are down roughly 8%. But the real warning sign is new listings surging 40% higher than last year. Dig into the data and a pattern emerges. A significant portion of these homes are investor-owned properties hitting the market simultaneously. What happened is textbook domino effect. Higher interest rates made the rental arbitrage math impossible. Monthly mortgage payments on recently purchased properties now exceed realistic rental income. So investors are exiting en masse, and each comparable sale pulls down the next. Here's the impossible statistic that captures the breakdown. Rents in Riverside have essentially flatlined over the past year, even as home prices fall. That should be economically contradictory, but it reveals the truth. Demand itself is evaporating. Young families who might have rented before buying are leaving California entirely. The investors who fueled the boom are now accelerating the bust. Riverside's decline is outpacing the national average, and the clusters of identical listings, same builder, same vintage, same desperate pricing, tell you this is just the beginning. The acceleration phase is coming. What makes Riverside particularly instructive is how clearly it demonstrates the danger of investor-driven markets. When a substantial portion of housing stock is owned by people who view homes purely as financial instruments, the exit can be swift and merciless. There's no emotional attachment holding back the sell decision, no sentimental value in the neighborhood where you raised your kids, just spreadsheets showing negative cash flow and the rational calculation to cut losses. The families who bought their homes to live in are now competing with investors dumping inventory, and they're losing. A family that needs to sell because of job relocation or growing needs can't compete with an investor willing to take a $100,000 loss just to stop the monthly bleed. Head north to Sacramento, and the contradictions become impossible to ignore. This was supposed to be the safe bet. Stable government jobs, an influx of Bay Area remote workers seeking space and value, a genuine, diversified economy. The median home price is down approximately 10% from peak, and days on market have doubled since 2023. You'll find state government workers who bought during the frenzy, counting on secure employment and the ability to refinance when rates dropped. Except, rates never dropped. Now they're stuck at peak valuations with mortgages at 7%, unable to sell without taking catastrophic losses, unable to refinance into anything better. The psychology of the trapped homeowner is particularly acute in Sacramento. These are people who did everything right, secured stable employment, saved for substantial down payments, bought within their means based on dual incomes. They weren't speculating or stretching, and yet they're trapped anyway, victims of timing and macroeconomic forces beyond their control. Some are considering strategic default, walking away from homes where they're hundreds of thousands underwater. Others are staying put but cutting every discretionary expense, effectively withdrawing from the consumer economy that keeps cities vibrant. Restaurants see it first, fewer diners, smaller tips, a palpable anxiety in the air. The myth was that stable government jobs could insulate Sacramento from market swings, but the math doesn't care about job security when carrying costs explode. Compare Sacramento's decline to Los Angeles County, and you'll find the capital city falling faster. Drive through the subdivisions on Sunday afternoons, and you'll see open houses with no foot traffic. Listing agents sitting alone, staging perfect, silence absolute. The realization setting in is brutal. There is no safe corner of California's housing market. If the capital city with recession-resistant employment can't hold values, what can? The answer appearing in the data is nothing. Fresno positioned itself as the family affordability anchor of the Central Valley. Agricultural backbone, reasonable commutes, homes that didn't require dual tech salaries. Prices are down roughly 9%, with inventory up a staggering 45%. The human element here is particularly cruel. First-time buyers who scraped together down payments 18 months ago are now underwater, owing more than their homes are worth in a market where comparable sales keep dropping. But the real story in Fresno isn't just falling prices. It's the insurance crisis making homes unsellable regardless of price. Extreme heat and proximity to wildfire zones have sent premiums soaring, in some cases rising faster than the mortgage payment itself. Prospective buyers touring homes in desirable neighborhoods are walking away the moment they see insurance quotes. Here's the impossible statistic that defines the crisis. There are homes in Fresno where the annual cost of insurance, property tax, and high summer utility bills now exceeds $24,000 before you even make a mortgage payment. For families earning the area's median income, the math simply doesn't work. Compared to the statewide median decline, Fresno is tracking worse, and the for sale signs are starting to include insurance disclaimers, a red flag that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. Being unsellable, it turns out, is far worse than being unaffordable. At least unaffordable homes have theoretical buyers. The agricultural economy that was supposed to provide stability is showing cracks of its own. Water rights disputes, drought conditions, and shifting crop viability are creating uncertainty in the very industries that employ Fresno's residents. When farms consolidate or shift operations, the ripple effects hit the housing market months later. The multi-generational families who formed the bedrock of Fresno's community are watching their children leave for opportunities elsewhere, taking with them the next generation of potential homebuyers. What's left is an aging demographic trying to sell homes to a shrinking pool of qualified buyers in a market where the fundamentals keep deteriorating. At least unaffordable homes have theoretical buyers. Cross the bay to Oakland and the collapse feels almost personal. This was a cultural hub, an art center, diverse heartbeat next to San Francisco's tech wealth. Home prices are down 12 to 15% from peak, with the condo segment taking the worst beating. Small landlords who bought properties as long-term investments are now selling at losses, unable to cover mortgage payments with rent in a city where tenant protections limit increases. The narrative you'll hear in national media focuses on crime concerns, but drill into the actual numbers, and the story is more complex. Property taxes on recently purchased buildings, combined with the end of remote work flexibility, have made the investor math impossible. Here's what the data shows. San Francisco, right across the bridge, is doing slightly better than Oakland in terms of price retention. That alone tells you this isn't purely about safety perceptions, it's about fundamental economic viability. Condos in renovated warehouses that sold for $650,000 in 2021 are now listed at $520,000, with price reductions every 30 days and still no offers. The same units relisted multiple times, each iteration a bit more desperate. Oakland's crisis reveals a hard truth. When a city's value proposition depends on being cheaper than San Francisco, and San Francisco itself is falling, the competitive advantage disappears. The Bay Area cracks are widening, and Oakland is sliding into the gap. The cultural institutions that made Oakland vibrant are feeling the squeeze too. Art galleries closing, music venues struggling to fill seats. The creative class that gave Oakland its identity, discovering they can no longer afford to live in the neighborhoods they helped revitalize. It's a particularly bitter irony. The artists and creatives who made certain Oakland neighborhoods desirable were priced out during the boom, and now the investors who replaced them are taking losses on properties that have lost the cultural cachet that justified the prices in the first place. What's left is a market in search of an identity, caught between San Francisco's shadow and its own unaffordable reality. If you're finding this analysis helpful and want to stay ahead of what's happening in real estate markets across the country, hit that subscribe button now. We're tracking these trends as they develop, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now to Sonoma County and the city of Santa Rosa, where wine country dreams are colliding with wildfire reality. The median home price is down approximately 11%, with listings up more than 50% year over year. You'll find retired couples who moved here for the climate, the scenery, the promise of California living at its finest, now facing insurance cancellations with no path to replacement coverage. This is where the crisis transcends economics and becomes existential. Wildfire risk has made traditional insurers flee the region entirely, forcing homeowners into the state's FAIR plan, a last resort option with limited coverage and steep premiums. Prospective buyers touring beautiful hillside properties are making offers contingent on obtaining insurance, then walking away when no reasonable policy materializes. Here's the impossible statistic. There are homes in Santa Rosa, move-in ready, in desirable neighborhoods, that are uninsurable at any price from traditional carriers. Compare Santa Rosa's decline to nearby Napa, and you'll see it's falling faster, even as both regions face similar risks. The for sale signs now share space with fire-hardened landscaping, defensible space clearing, and all the mitigation efforts that were supposed to make these homes safe. But the insurance industry's actuarial tables don't care about individual preparation. Paradise, it turns out, priced itself out of safety. And once buyers realize a home can't be insured, it doesn't matter how beautiful the views are. The wine industry, Sonoma County's economic engine, is facing its own crisis that compounds the housing collapse. Climate change is affecting grape yields. Tourism has yet to fully recover to pre-pandemic levels, and the region's signature product is seeing demand soften as younger consumers drink less wine. The vineyard workers and hospitality employees who service the industry are already among the lowest paid in the county, and as wineries trim budgets and delay expansions, even those jobs are becoming scarce. The dream of retiring to wine country, of sipping Pinot Noir on a deck overlooking rolling vineyards, is colliding with the reality of annual wildfire evacuations, smoke-choked summers, and insurance bills that rival mortgage payments. The lifestyle premium that justified Sonoma County's prices is evaporating in the haze of another fire season. San Francisco's downturn is severe, but somehow expected, priced into the national conversation in a way that softens the shock. The median home price is down 15 to 18% from the 2022 peak, with office vacancy rates hovering around 30% in the financial district. The human story is everywhere. Tech workers laid off in Point, the Great Correction of 2023 and 2024. Holding on to condos purchased with stock options that evaporated. Now underwater on mortgages for apartments in buildings where half the units sit empty. The domino effect here is almost elegant in its brutality. Office spaces go vacant, ground floor retail closes, the urban vitality that justified premium housing costs disappears, and residential values crater in response. Walk through south of Market or Mission Bay, and you'll see luxury buildings with concierge services and rooftop pools where units are listed $200,000 below purchase price and still generating no interest. The for sale signs, once rare in these neighborhoods, are turning weathered from months of sun exposure. Compare this to the worst downturns San Francisco experienced in 2008, and the parallels are unmistakable. Except this time, there's no clear catalyst for recovery. Tech hiring remains anemic, Return-to-office mandates have failed to refill downtown, and the city's tax base is under strain from commercial real estate collapses. The municipal budget crisis brewing in San Francisco is its own disaster in waiting. Commercial property values are reassessed, tax revenues drop, and suddenly the city faces impossible choices. Cut services, raise taxes on remaining residents and businesses, or pray for a federal bailout that may never come. The public transit system, BART, is facing a fiscal cliff as ridership remains well below pre-pandemic levels and operating costs climb. Streets are dirtier, response times for city services slower, the small deteriorations that erode quality of life and push more residents toward the exit. It's a vicious cycle. Declining services justify leaving. Departures reduce tax revenue. Reduced revenue means worse services. And with each resident who leaves, the per capita burden of maintaining the city's infrastructure falls on fewer shoulders. San Francisco's crisis was predictable, discussed, analyzed. But predictability doesn't soften the blow for the individuals living it. And here's the thing, San Francisco isn't even the most shocking collapse in the Bay Area. That distinction belongs to a place that was supposed to be immune. San Jose is where the California housing myth truly dies. This is Silicon Valley's core, the city that mints millionaires, the place where bidding wars and all-cash offers were supposed to be permanent features of the landscape. Home prices are down roughly 14% from peak, and inventory is at decade-high levels, numbers that should be impossible in the tech capital of the world. The human element here is particularly stark. Dual-income engineers, the couples who represent the top tier of American earning power, are delaying starting families and selling starter homes because the math no longer works. Stock options, the secret weapon of Bay Area compensation, turn out not to equal liquidity when the market turns and exercise windows close. Here's the impossible statistic that captures the breakdown. Million-dollar homes in San Jose are sitting on the market for 90-plus days, a timeline that would have been laughable in 2021 when homes routinely sold in a weekend with offers $200,000 over asking. The price cut stickers are layering on top of each other now, each reduction a small defeat, each week without offers a mounting crisis. What went wrong is both simple and complex. Tech layoffs eliminated the buyer pool at the top end. Rising interest rates made the monthly cost of a $1.5 million home rival what it cost to buy a $2 million home in 2020. And the work-from-anywhere flexibility that was supposed to be permanent turned out to be a 24-month experiment that companies are now reversing. The venture capital ecosystem that funds Silicon Valley's startups is itself contracting. Fewer IPOs mean fewer instant millionaires. Fewer acquisitions mean fewer liquidity events. And the wealth creation engine that fed the housing market is sputtering. The engineers and product managers who could count on their equity to fund down payments are discovering their shares are worth a fraction of the paper valuations they carried during funding rounds. The startup that was going to make them rich is now doing down rounds or shutting down entirely. The American dream in San Jose was always transactional. Work impossible hours, sacrifice your 20s and 30s, and the stock options would make it all worthwhile. When the stocks don't pay off, the transaction collapses, and suddenly, that $3,500 one-bedroom apartment in a generic complex doesn't seem like a reasonable trade-off anymore. Compare today's San Jose market to the 2021 frenzy, and it feels like a different economic universe. Even the engine of California's economy is stalling, and if San Jose can't hold, what's left? The answer is coming, and it's the one nobody wanted to hear. Los Angeles. The city that defines California to the world, the sprawling megalopolis of entertainment, tech, trade, and aspiration. Home prices down 12 to 13% across the metro area, with coastal condos experiencing even steeper drops. If you thought Los Angeles was too big, too diverse, too central to fail, the data is now telling a different story. The human element appears in every sector. entertainment workers juggling gig economy instability and rising tax burdens, dual-income families discovering that $180,000 in household income no longer cuts it in a city where median homes cost $850,000. Young professionals making the ruthless calculation that Austin or Phoenix or Nashville offers better quality of life at half the cost. The cascade effect in Los Angeles is particularly devastating because the city depends on a self-reinforcing loop. People move here for opportunity, their presence creates more opportunity, values rise, the city's cachet grows. But the loop is reversing. As residents leave, the tax base strains. As the tax base strains, city services deteriorate. As services deteriorate, desirability premium that justified LA's cost of living evaporates. And it's not just the sticker price falling, it's the hidden costs accelerating. Insurance premiums are spiking across fire risk zones from the Santa Monica Mountains to the hills above Pasadena. HOA fees in aging condo buildings are jumping 15 to 20% as reserves run dry and necessary repairs pile up. Property tax reassessments, temporarily delayed by Prop 13, are hitting new buyers at valuations that reflect peak pricing even as the market falls around them. The entertainment industry's transformation is rippling through LA's housing market in ways that won't show up in aggregate statistics for months. Streaming services are contracting, studios are consolidating, production budgets are shrinking, and the army of below-the-line workers who keep Hollywood running are seeing gig opportunities dry up. The writer who could count on 3 months of steady work per year is now scrambling for one. The production assistant who juggled multiple shows is staring at an empty calendar. These aren't tech-level salaries, but they were enough to justify LA's cost of living when the work was steady. When it's not, the math falls apart instantly. Here's what the data shows in brutal clarity. Los Angeles is experiencing the largest absolute dollar value losses in California. A 12% drop on an $850,000 median means more wealth evaporation than a 15% drop in a cheaper market. Drive through neighborhoods from Culver City to Pasadena, from Silver Lake to the Valley, and you'll see entire streets lined with for sale signs. Not scattered listings, but clusters, blocks, a visual representation of mass exit. The opportunity on paper is obvious. Lower prices, less competition, a chance to buy into a legendary city. But the paralysis on the ground is equally obvious. Buyers waiting for the bottom, sellers refusing to accept reality, a market frozen in disbelief that Los Angeles, of all places, could fall this hard. The city of dreams is now the city of falling values, and the reckoning is only beginning. 10 cities, one pattern emerging from the data. This isn't a single crash, but a constellation of localized failures driven by shared forces. Interest rates that doubled carrying costs overnight. Insurance crises making homes uninsurable regardless of price. Remote work reversals forcing brutal commute calculations. Migration patterns that are bleeding California's tax base and buyer pool simultaneously. The belief in California immunity, that persistent myth that housing here was different, special, protected, has collided with mathematical reality. The for sale signs multiplying across these cities aren't anomalies. They're signals of systemic breakdown. Housing markets fracture when the cost of ownership outpaces the income required to sustain it. And across California, that threshold has been crossed. Nobody is to blame. Rational individual decisions produced irrational collective outcomes. What comes next depends on forces still in motion. Will rates fall enough to restart demand? Will insurance markets stabilize? Will tech hiring return? Or will this correction deepen into something worse? Subscribe to stay updated as this story develops, and drop a comment telling us what you're seeing in your local market, because the data only tells half the story. The rest is lived.